a life changed forever. James lived in a small, peaceful town. He worked as a carpenter and loved his quiet life. His wife, Lily, was a schoolteacher. They had been married for 5 happy years. James and Lily were not rich, but they had each other, and that was enough. Every morning they enjoyed coffee on their porch. James would watch Lily smile as she talked about her day. Her laughter made their house feel warm and full of life. On weekends they loved to walk by the river, sharing stories and dreams about their future. One rainy evening, Lily decided to visit her sister. She kissed James goodbye and said, "I won't be long." James smiled and told her to drive carefully. He stayed home to finish fixing a broken chair. The sound of the rain outside was comforting, and he hummed a song while he worked. Hours passed, and Lily did not return. James felt a strange worry growing in his chest. He called her phone, but there was no answer. He looked out the window at the rain, hoping to see her car lights. The silence of the house felt heavy. Then the phone rang. A stranger's voice said, "Are you James? There's been an accident. You need to come to the hospital." James froze. His hands trembled as he tried to ask questions, but the man only repeated, "Please come quickly." James grabbed his coat and keys, running out into the rain. His heart pounded with fear, and his mind raced with thoughts of Lily. He whispered to himself, "She'll be fine. She has to be fine." But deep down he felt a growing dread. At the hospital, James rushed through the doors, his clothes soaked from the rain. A nurse guided him to a small room where a doctor was waiting. The doctor looked tired and serious. "Mr. James," the doctor began, "your wife was in a car accident. The rain made the roads slippery, and her car lost control." James listened, his hands gripping the edge of the chair. "We did everything we could, but—" The doctor paused, and James felt his heart sink. "She didn't make it," the doctor finished softly. James stared at the floor, his world suddenly quiet. The words felt unreal, like a terrible dream. He wanted to scream, to run, but his body refused to move. The nurse placed a comforting hand on his shoulder, but James couldn't feel it. He asked to see Lily. When he walked into the room, he saw her lying still, her face pale but peaceful. She looked as if she were only sleeping. James sat beside her, holding her hand, and whispered, "I'm sorry, Lily. I should have been with you." Days passed, but time felt meaningless. Friends and neighbours came to offer their condolences. They brought food and flowers, but nothing could fill the emptiness in James's heart. The house felt cold and silent without Lily's laughter. James tried to go back to his work, but every piece of wood he touched reminded him of the life they had built together. The chair he had been fixing that night remained unfinished, sitting in the corner like a symbol of his broken world. One evening, James sat in their living room, staring at an old photo album. The pictures showed happier times, Lily laughing on their wedding day, the two of them painting the walls of their first home, and vacations by the sea. Each photo brought memories that felt like a dagger to his heart. He closed the album and stood up. The house was too quiet, too full of reminders. He decided to take a walk. As he stepped outside, the cool night air hit his face. The streets were empty, and the soft glow of streetlights guided his path. James wandered aimlessly until he found himself at the park where he and Lily used to spend Sunday afternoons. He sat on their favourite bench, staring at the empty swings. The sound of the wind in the trees was the only thing keeping him company. For the first time in days, James allowed himself to cry. The tears came slowly at first, then all at once. He felt like a dam had broken inside him. He cried for Lily, for the life they had shared, and for the future they had planned that would now never happen. As the hours passed, the sky began to lighten with the first hints of dawn. James wiped his face and took a deep breath. He realized that while the pain would never go away, he had to find a way to keep moving forward. It's what Lily would have wanted. With a heavy heart, James stood up and began walking back home. The world around him seemed the same, but for James, everything had changed. Back at home, James poured himself a cup of coffee. He sat at the kitchen table staring at the steaming cup. Lily had always made their mornings special, singing softly as she prepared breakfast. The silence in the house felt louder than ever. He looked at a small stack of unopened letters on the counter. Among them was a card from Lily's sister. James hesitated, then opened it. Inside, her handwriting read, "James, we're here for you. Take your time, but don't forget you're not alone." Her words lingered in his mind. He hadn't seen anyone since the funeral. Friends had called and knocked on his door, but he didn't have the strength to face them. He had shut himself away, drowning in his grief. But now a small part of him wondered if isolating himself was helping or hurting. That afternoon, James picked up his phone and scrolled through his contacts. He paused at the name Tom, his best friend. Lily had always said Tom could make anyone smile, no matter how bad their day was. Taking a deep breath, James tapped the call button. "James!" Tom's voice was warm and surprised. "Hey, man! It's good to hear from you." They talked for over an hour. James didn't share everything, but he felt lighter, just hearing Tom's familiar laugh and words of encouragement. For the first time in weeks, James felt a flicker of something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. When the call ended, James sat back and looked out the window. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. He promised himself he would take small steps. One call, one moment, one day at a time. It was the only way forward. The next morning, James decided to take a walk through the park. It was a place he and Lily had visited often, their favourite spot to escape the noise of the world. As he stepped onto the familiar path, memories flooded back. Their laughter, their quiet conversations, the way she'd always stop to feed the ducks. James found himself at their bench, the one overlooking the lake. He sat down, running his fingers over the wood. The last time they were here, Lily had been excited about their anniversary trip. She'd planned everything, from the places they'd visit to the small cabin they'd stay in. Sitting there now, James felt the weight of her absence, but also a strange sense of peace. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small notebook. It was one Lily had given him years ago, encouraging him to write down his thoughts. He hadn't touched it in months. Opening the first blank page, he began to write. He wrote about the pain of losing her, the moments he missed most, and even the small things that still made him smile, like her favourite song playing on the radio or the way she'd always hum while cooking. As he wrote, A soft breeze passed by, rustling the leaves. It felt almost as if Lily was there, encouraging him, reminding him to keep going. For the first time since the accident, James didn't feel entirely alone. He closed the notebook and looked out at the water, letting the calm of the moment wash over him. In the weeks that followed, James made it a habit to visit the park every morning. Each day he brought the notebook with him, filling its pages with memories of Lily, his feelings, and even small sketches of places they had been together. Writing became his way of coping, a quiet dialogue with the love he had lost. One day, as he sat on the bench, a young woman approached him. She carried a canvas and a small set of paints. She smiled warmly and asked, "Do you mind if I paint here? This view is beautiful." James nodded, gesturing to the space beside him. "Go ahead. It is beautiful, isn't it?" The woman, whose name was Clara, set up her easel and began painting the lake. James watched her work silently, her brush moving gracefully over the canvas. After some time she spoke. "I come here often. There's something peaceful about this place."
James hesitated, but then replied, "It was my wife's favourite spot."
"We used to sit here all the time." Clara paused and looked at him with understanding. "You must have shared some special moments here." James nodded, his voice soft. "She loved this place. It feels like a part of her is still here." Clara smiled gently. "I believe the people we love never truly leave us. They stay in the places they cherished, in the memories we keep alive." Her words stayed with James long after she had packed up her painting and left. That evening, he found himself looking through old photo albums, smiling at the moments they had captured. For the first time, the memories didn't feel as heavy. They felt like a gift.